Okay, hi everyone, and thank you for joining me today for the Gaining Self-Knowledge with Virtual Career Tools. To begin, I kind of want to go over with everyone a self-checklist. So by that, I want you to take a look at each of these individual items and just kind of ask yourself, you can also type it out in the chat, where are you currently in these steps? So are you confident with your application package? If you reviewed our other workshops for your resume, you may have already started to update that, and therefore you may feel a bit more comfortable about starting to send that out. Do you know where to begin applying? Some of you who are here right now may be checking this out because you're not really sure how to get started. What are some good websites to look for a job or an internship? Do you know what to begin applying for? So I know those questions are kind of similar, but I kept them separate because even if, let's say, I knew I wanted to work for Disney, but I don't necessarily know for what department or what kind of role, I just know that I'm a huge fan of the organization and I would love to be a part of them somehow. Fantastic, Sarah. That's really good. In this case, you can always pick and choose which resources may benefit you, especially if you have some of these under your belt already. So thank you for sharing that. And have you researched the careers you're interested in, qualifications, salary, job market? So sometimes you can say, all right, I definitely love working with people and giving back, so I want to be a social worker. But do they actually make enough money where I can pay my bills? Will I have to get a second job? You know, these perfectly rational questions. And then from there, are you ready to network and interview? So let's say if you are currently in Sarah's shoes, where you have most of these pretty done, but perhaps meeting with professionals, what to say to them, how to market yourself professionally could be something new for you. This is your first time stepping into that world after attending classes for 4 or so years, it can be a whole new learning curve in terms of how to network with professionals and what to say to them if you only have like a minute or so to make an impression. And just in case before I move on, if you want to type again in the chat any comments or feedback, if any of these steps certainly you struggle on or currently would like to work more on, I'll keep that in mind as we go further. All right. So from here, the first one I'm going to show you is the Majors and Careers page. Hopefully all, if not most of you are already familiar with this one. It's personally one of my favorites. The reason why I like it, and I kind of outlined it here, is that it offers information on each of our majors. So if you had even a double major or a minor, you can always split and choose what you like. Sometimes you may go for something like cinema studies, but you're really interested in film. You could always take a look at whichever page. There's no limits really. But while you're there, you're going to be looking at the acquired skills, career titles, types of organizations that hire you. These two are nice because if you want to be a director of a certain department, that can be completely different if you're doing it for a nonprofit or if you're doing it for a large corporation. The culture could be different, the expectations, responsibilities, salary. So it's always nice to keep in mind that. And then job search links and career and professional associations. So I'm going to show you that right now. And just in case if I ever lose you with my screen sharing, please let me know and I'll restart that too. So once you go to our Career Development Center page, explore majors and careers, and explore majors and careers again right here with possibilities, you'll see what I mentioned are a whole list of majors, A to V basically. If anyone has any recommendations for your major that you want to check out, we can absolutely do so. I was a psych major myself, so typically I always tend to use this one as a default example, but once you're here, depending on where you are with that checklist I showed you earlier, you could be wondering, okay, I went through the program, I got decent grades, but what did I really learn that employers want to know about me? What is very marketable? So here are some of the acquired skills. Some of these may be soft skills, some of these are a bit more hard skills. So strong reading comprehension, writing, and speaking skills. To be honest, you could apply that just about anywhere, but it is true of you now that you've completed this program. Something like research is a bit more technical because we learn things like SPSS, JASP, probably working with Excel to analyze and plug in our data. And these are a bit more technical and marketable as well. Career titles, so let's say with psychology, I just kind of figured school psychologist or maybe a psychiatrist of sorts. But there's so many other things that you can do. For example, dance therapist, if you're interested in therapy and dance. clergy, even if you have a religious affiliation. There's art therapists, advertising as well. So, if you're interested in behavior and consumerism, then that's certainly something you can combine. And types of organizations that'll hire. This is meant to kind of expand your horizons and let you know that there's more out there. So, professional associations. A quick tip for those of you who are interested in going to graduate school, some of these professional associations will have grants and scholarships. In fact, I was part of one where they were honoring retiring school counselors, and for new emerging school counselors, they were giving away essentially scholarship money so that they can complete their program. They also do have job boards and internship boards too, so feel free to check them out. And then, as I mentioned, job search links. So in addition to purchase jobs for things like Glassdoor, Indeed, LinkedIn, these are more specialized that you can always take a look at and see depending on what you want to do. If I want to be a social worker, as my previous example, I would check out probably this website, as opposed to if I really love research, then I'm going to try and stick to that potentially. So going back to our slides, now let's say you've kind of started your roadmap in terms of, okay, I kind of have an idea of some sample career titles I want. I have some ideas of where I want to do that for, and I've looked at some of the job search sites. But maybe it's not enough, or maybe in my area, if I'm an out-of-state student, I don't really know what's out there and I want to keep looking. So Buzzfile is the next thing that I recommend to check out. And it's going to be right here. This one is just under Network and Connect, so career preparation, Network and Connect. And please don't worry about getting these links. It's all going to be in the slides that I'm sharing with you. So once you click on Buzzfile, similar to majors and careers, you can take a look at just about every major for Purchase College, or you can look by state if you prefer. So if I'm sticking to my psychology example, I would check out this. And let's say I want to stay in New York. All right. So the nice thing about Buzzfile is that it shows you quite literally thousands of companies that you may not have heard of before, some even in your own backyard. So right now we're looking at about 4,000 companies with a couple of different pages, but we'll just focus on the first one for now. So the breakdown here is it'll always show you the company name, the type in case there are different branches, if it's the main headquarters, the address as well. So basically location. In case you are interested in working in a large organization or a smaller one, it also mentions how many employees they have. The other nice thing they do is what part of the industry are they a part of? So you have, of course, different things related to psychology. You have substance abuse counseling, mental health, clinics, let's see, rehabilitation, mental health agency, and government as well. So it's always nice to see what part of the industry are they specialized in, and do you want to be a part of that? The other thing I skipped, but I personally kind of prefer this as one of my favorites, especially when it comes to internships, is the revenue. So here you can see, unless it's not available, how much they make essentially in the year. So I'm going to scroll down and see maybe this one, for example. So Project Renewal, and this is their headquarters, they make about $66 million a year. And it's substance abuse counseling. So let's say if you're interested in that field or that kind of career, it may not be too much of a stretch to say that they could have paid internships, some part-time jobs, or at least the funds to offer these opportunities, especially while we may be experiencing a hiring freeze for some of the smaller organizations. As opposed to that, for example, if we pick something like this, SBH Behavioral Healthcare Inc., which only makes about $1 million a year. They probably don't necessarily have that much extra funding. Maybe they're closer to like a nonprofit of sorts or a community center for outpatients. And that may factor into what you're looking for. So always keep that in mind, and that way you can take a look and say, okay, I love big organizations. I really am ambitious and want to climb up. So knowing that they're established. And you can always check out their links. They have their website. They have some Q&A and stuff. In fact, I'll just show you that real quick. So we'll take a look again at Project Renewal. And, there we go. So as I mentioned, it has their website. It has a little bit about them. For those of you that are already starting to write cover letters and you know that you go on their website, you look at their About Me section and you kind of glance at it as you write your why I want to be a part of your team on your cover letter. This can be some of that as well. So feel free to take a look. It's kind of like a cheat sheet for now while you build that out. It also has demographics for zip codes, as most, if not all of you are graduating essentially, and you might start looking to relocate for a job. This is a nice way to see the neighborhood, the community. One way I like to joke about it is if you have a particular preference for a type of food. So here we see predominantly white, but it has mostly in the minority section, Hispanic. So there's probably some decent Spanish restaurants nearby. So if that's something you're interested in, you can always check that out with this section here. All right, and going back to our slides. So now that you've taken a look at, let's say, at least 10 of the 4,000 or so companies, maybe you want to research more about their specific titles or the job market itself. So here we have ONet, and just in case I want to check the chat. All right, so I haven't missed anything yet. If I'm going too fast, by the way, if you want me to slow down or repeat something, please feel free to let me know. So ONet is wonderful because it takes information from the US Department of Labor and plugs it into this awesome website. So let's say sticking to psychology, I'm just going to put psychology and see what comes up. So usually it's pretty accurate when it comes to job titles. Sometimes it can kind of accumulate them. So I'll give you a quick example. If you wanted to look at different artists, so fine artists, including painters, sculptors, and illustrators, so those are kind of combined together. So I would say take it with a grain of salt, unless what they're giving you is highly specialized for your search. So let's say school psychologist. Oh, sorry, going back real quick. If it ever shows like a little star or bright outlook, that usually means that the job market is growing, so there would be more opportunities, which is always a good thing. So if I click on school psychologist, it kind of breaks it down neatly into different forms of information. One thing I'll say, and I'll show you it later in the presentation too, is if you're somebody who doesn't like to see blocks and walls of text, that's okay. I'm going to share with you some strategies on how to digest this information. There's also a similar website that I'll show you, which is like this with more pictures, candidly put. So let's say, for example, if I have an idea of what a school psychologist does, but I don't know the whole deal. I don't know what they do in terms of everything on their daily responsibilities and tasks. So it has 19 different things. Some of these, as you go through them, will make sense, maybe almost common sense or intuitively in terms of, okay, a school psychologist, they work in schools, they administer tests, but some of these may also be things that you may not have known. So design classes and programs to meet the needs. So there's an educator portion of it. Maybe you hadn't considered that. Maybe it's surprising, but also refreshing because you like to be an educator. So those are things to keep in mind. Technology skills. These are some things that you definitely want to know as you go into this market. So Excel, you got to know it. Things like Ewing, Solutions, QuickWriter, Microsoft Word. Those of you who are currently starting your application process, these are good things to keep in mind because you can consider them like buzzwords on a resume. If they're not there, maybe you can start learning either from YouTube tutorials, from a classmate or professor, whatever support system you have to be able to develop these new skills. I'll also show you some of those as well. Knowledge, skills, abilities, work activities. This one I like as well. It shows you work context. So it's almost like if you were having a conversation with one of these professionals and you ask them, can you tell me a little bit about the daily work? What is it like, sitting in your shoes? And then they tell you that, basically I'm indoors pretty much every day. I'm emailing every day. I am working with people constantly. There's a decent amount of freedom in what I do. So you can kind of take it as like a pseudo interview with all of these questions they answered through surveys. The other important summary of information here is how much experience they need, how much education, and it also summarizes that here. So if we can say a little bit more than half have a postmaster's certificate, and I really want to be a school psychologist, then I kind of have to understand that that's just going to be something I need to complete in order to reach this career. And if I'm interested in credentialing and training, certifications, licenses, and apprenticeships as well. I'm going to skip some of this for now. It also shows you related jobs, but something you probably are interested in, and that's how much would I make at this. So it does show the median wage for 2019. As I mentioned, this information is from the US Department of Labor, and I'm going to click on New York. So it'll show me the averages for New York versus the US. So usually New York is a bit higher, but they can be comparable. So on the low end, I see that it's about 53,000. On the median, it'll be about 88, which is not a bad number if I do say so myself. But at the high end, you can see that easily 6 figures here. So the idea is that if you ever want to know what the ceiling is for your careers, especially by state, this is an awesome way to do so. So as you look at job applications that say school psychologist now hiring 40,000, then I can say to myself, well, wait a minute. I know that around the low end it's about 53,000, but they're only offering 40,000. So is it because they don't have the funds to pay more? Is it because they're under evaluating the position? What are the responsibilities? Can they offer me other benefits if they're not going to pay me as much? So these are all important questions you can ask yourself with being equipped with this kind of knowledge. And you can also do salary negotiations too. So this is just food for thought for that. The other thing you can do is state trends, which is the job market. So as you can see in New York, we're going about 16% by 2026. And so there's about 1,000 new jobs in that time frame. So certainly any new jobs, opportunities growing are better than the opposite. So if you want to go down this track, it's never a bad thing to take a look at what the jobs are like. And maybe, for example, if New York wasn't that great for that, then I could go to Connecticut or New Jersey and I could say, okay, maybe I'll get licensed in another state and just commute to Connecticut. So the job opportunities are a little bit less. So if I was in Connecticut, I would be looking in New York, more or less. All right. And I'm going to go to the Alumni Mentor Network. But before I do, I just want to ask, have any of you either browsed some of the resources I've just covered or sparked any interest based on what I've just disclosed to you? Perfect. And with ONet, and again, I'll mention the other websites. If you are somebody who doesn't like staring at walls of text, there are ways to certainly kind of pick and choose what information is the most pertinent to you and your situation. And that way, if you're staring at job applications all day and you need to take a break, you don't want to add in ONet just yet because it's just more information. So as to not overwhelm yourself, I'll give you some strategies at the end. But thank you for looking up ONet. So now I'm going to pull up the Alumni Mentor Network. And so the link I have will take you to this page here, and it gives you a little information about that. So it's a very cool partnership that we have with the Office of Alumni Engagement because we're trying to connect our current students and our recent graduates to alumni who have already been in the field for a few years, those that are just starting out, and those who have been maybe working a decade or more. So the nice thing here is that you can register for free. It says here it only takes about 2 minutes. And I'll just show you what that looks like as well. So this is the website. It has a nice little background to purchase. And you can choose to either find a mentor or be a mentor. I myself am on this platform. I'm really just a mentor. But the idea is that you are able to connect with people who have been in your shoes. So if you had a certain major, and you can connect to somebody else who's had that major. Maybe they're working at the place that you want to work for, or someplace similar. You can ask them, I see that you graduated in, let's say, last year or the year before that, and you took a class with so-and-so. How did that go? What skills did they teach you that you felt most employers were asking you during interviews, or once you were on the job, did you feel that the training at Purchase really helped? And they can give you honest answers. So it's never a bad thing to be able to do interviews with them, ask them questions, find a new mentor, and get some help. And the other thing, just in case, how we match with mentees and mentors, you're able to fill out your profile. You can select the things that you're particularly interested in. And it kind of has a OkCupid and those kind of algorithms to match. So that way you're able to see, okay, these are, let's say, 3 to 5 different mentors that fit what I filled out. And you're able to request them, send them messages, set up, let's say, virtual meetings through Zoom or phone, anything you choose to do so. All right, and Candid Career. So hopefully some of you may have seen some emails about Candid Career. The nice thing about this website, and I should just pull it up now, is that it is kind of like a professional YouTube of sorts. And what I mean by that is it takes all of these different industries and channels, career titles, college majors, companies, and more, how to get hired. I imagine this drop down is certainly interesting to you in terms of resume writing, interview, and networking, and more. You're able to check out all of these different things. So let's say if I want to look at the different topics they have, you can see pretty much every category that you may be interested in. For example, COVID-19, what does that look like for your industry? What information can they offer? So I'll just click on that so we can check that out real quick. There we go. And it has 10 tips to impress at a virtual fair, advice for working from home. Something like this isn't bad to consider also, because as students or as recent students, you may have figured that working from home can be easy to get distracted, right? And so if you have to do that in a professional sense, maybe that could impact your productivity. So if this is something you want to check out, they're really short videos. Most of them are 5 minutes or less. Some of them are a little bit humorous and entertaining, but pretty much all of them have important information that can help you out. I'm using LinkedIn effectively. LinkedIn again, virtual interviewing. This is something you're going to start seeing a lot more. Career exploration, how to ace a phone interview. So Candid Career is something I like to work with because even if it's just like 5 minutes a day while you have your breakfast, coffee, and you're just looking at your phone, if you check out something like this, you may learn something new that can save you a lot of time and a couple of headaches as you start to do your job search. And then we have InterviewStream. So I'm going to take this moment before I open up InterviewStream. Actually, I'll just open it up and then ask. But the idea is, how many of you struggle with interviewing, whether that be virtually or in person? If you don't mind just typing in the chat. If you feel comfortable, that's fantastic. And there could also be levels to that. Let's say if I put you in a room, whether it's in an individual interview, in a group interview, interviewing with the committee, and you are just a people person, you have no issues, no nerves, you're awesome, right? But maybe it can be different if you have to stare at a camera or at a phone and you don't really get that same level of comfort, because certainly it can be a different experience. So the idea is that the platform of InterviewStream is an awesome way to practice that. And I want to let you know this in particular is just one of the many resources we've always had access to. It's not something we picked up just because of COVID and everybody's doing online interviews, not at all. This is something we've always had in our toolkit. And the cool thing about InterviewStream is that you create an account to purchase, all free. You can look at the different industries. They have pre-recorded interviews. So let's say, again, school psychologist, I take a look at one of those. It'll have options for me to pick different questions that are already recorded, and I'm able to record myself answering. So if I have a nervous habit where I really start to say a lot, and then I play it back, I can say, oh wow, like I realized my answers weren't bad, but the way I was saying them, it had a lot of verbal filler, I didn't seem as confident or comfortable, and that can send off mixed messages to the employer, as opposed to if I'm making eye contact, smiling, feeling comfortable with my body language. So it's a great way to get feedback on that. You can also record your reply, and you're able to send that to us as career counselors, to your professors, to your friends, to your family, whoever you want to get feedback, and that way they can help you. So this is something, as I mentioned, that will be available from the slides if you want to check out the links. You can create your account, it's free, and then you can also check out the informations, the videos that they have here. All right. So from here, you may have seen this from one of the other slides, but these are lifelong learnings, skill development, and micro-credentialing that is available. So this one, Coursera, and they're updating and changing it as well. But the idea is that you are able to take a look at a ton of different free courses that can teach you a new skill. So if we backtrack a little bit and we take a look at ONet rather, and you say, okay, I know one of the marketable skills for that industry is something like Excel or Photoshop or whatever the course is. And then you can say, Coursera has a free course on that. I think I should sign up, and that way I can learn it in and out, and I can say comfortably, not just on my resume, but in an interview, I know Excel like the back of my hand. Harvard University, free online courses. You can also include the fact that it was from Harvard on your resume. So it's not a bad way to say that, I took a course from a prestigious school teaching me this subject area, and I aced it basically. And edX, these are just more courses, open culture, Yale as well. They have self-care and the science of well-being if you're interested in perhaps not just professional or industry, but also just things that can benefit you and your quality of life too. There's also LinkedIn Learning for those of you that are familiar with lynda.com. This one, just keep a note that it is fee-based, but that's okay because they often have partnerships with local library systems. In fact, because you're all British students or more or less still, even though it's spring finished, the idea is that you can apply for a Westchester Library card, regardless of where you live. That'll give you access to this resource. If there's any specific restrictions with that, I'm not aware of, but you should be fine, especially as recent graduates, to be able to do this if you need it. And that way you can bypass the fee, you can do this learning, you can grow your skills and not just stay stagnant because honestly speaking, during quarantine, especially if you're in the summer not taking courses, you may just be tempted to watch a bunch of Netflix or, learn how to cook or do a new interesting project. And that's fantastic. Certainly don't stop that. But the idea is that you can also use this time to be productive, and that way you can say, okay, I made goals for myself, I made plans, and I stuck to them. I learned a new course, it's a credential, and I can show that off, I can market it. The other thing I want to say to all of you is that everyone is applying to jobs, right? That's just kind of a fact of life. And if you and another graduate are in the same situation in that you've had a similar academic training, but perhaps different experiences, volunteering, internships, and jobs, that's one thing. But let's say your resumes are completely identical, but one student or graduate does these courses and the other one doesn't. Then that person is already a bit more marketable than their neighbor. So you may just want to consider that as well. So if you're not necessarily too focused on, I want to get all these skills and courses, but you can just say, how do I separate myself from the pack? How do I make myself marketable? And then it could also change your perspective and say, okay, I understand that I can't just spend too much time having fun. I also have to be productive and see what I can do to improve myself. And then additional resources, so employer information from Vault, Glassdoor, as I mentioned, they're a great search link. I use them often with students and alumni as well, just to see what's out there in addition to our search purchase job score. Candid Career, as I showed you, nonprofit Westchester, Career One Stop. They have awesome services for career coaching and helping you out, especially if you're struggling. And there's nothing wrong with that. The idea is knowing who to access and being able to properly express where you're currently at, whether at the checklist or, if you just have any questions. Department of Labor and Department of Labor for self-employment. So if you're somebody who maybe wants to start a business, you can always check out things like this as well. And then navigating your career through COVID-19, I'm sure that's something you may be interested in as well. Check out the information we have that can help you get through this pandemic. So as I mentioned previously, ways to digest information and organize. So I have 3 things I developed, a little bit simplified, and the idea is that they're a base that you can take and run with. So if you prefer the mind map or the Excel or the Word document that I'm about to show you, and I will be sharing this in the presentation too, take what you like and make it make sense for you. And what I mean by that is, even if you look at Buzzfile and the thousands of companies they have, or if you look at ONet and the wonderful, drop downs of text that you can search for hours, the idea is that if you stare at that all day, it can be overwhelming and it may not always, let's say, digest properly. So if you're able to take bits and pieces and kind of organize and outline, that'll save you time, that'll save you headaches, and that can make it easier to navigate for you. So I'm going to pull that up right now in terms of what I made. So the first one is a mind map, and I made this based around the idea of just job searching, but you could always edit it to be whatever you want. Here we have the different breakdowns. So if you go down here, you take a look at the website. So that's connected to the job search. From there, let's say you swap this out for whatever industry is specific to you. Then you can go into the professional associations that you checked out, the job boards, the job markets. So that would be ONet. Job boards can be any of the search links we discussed, and professional associations from the majors and career page. And then you start to edit in the information, and you can see what it looks like visually and how it all connects. So some of you that are more visual learners, you may like this approach. I'll also show you again the Excel and Word in case you prefer those methods as well. But continuing with this, you have your application package. You have your resumes, your cover letters, your online portfolio. There are also online portfolio links. We have those in our guide. In case you're interested, I can send you those too. Interviewing, what to wear. We have information and resources for that as well. And it can vary depending on your industry. Having a suit is fantastic, but it may not be a one-size-fits-all depending on what you want to do. If you're an artist, there are ways to kind of blend in your artistic flair of sorts and your creativity into how you present yourself, while at the same time being business casual or being full business of sorts. What to say, this can be your networking elevator pitch. Have you been practicing that? Do you know what to say? Phone, virtual, or in person? I would say probably most are going to be phone or Skype or Zoom at the moment, but you never know, in the next few weeks, next month or so, people may start doing in-person interviews as well. So it's always nice to be ready for both. I added in self-care here as well because it is very important. As I mentioned, sometimes all this information can be overwhelming. I'm sure everybody has things on their plate, so you never want to disregard your own well-being as well. So with self-care, we have things like taking breaks, staying positive, relying on your support system. That could be your friends, your family, professors, loved ones, your career counselors, of course. So you can always, let's say, find somebody who can be in your corner, who wants you to succeed, and it doesn't feel like you're taking on the world all by yourself. All right, and any questions on the mind map, please feel free to let me know. This was a website called Mural, and I will send you this one I made, mural.co, and I just kind of played around with one of their templates and filled in the information. It didn't take too long. This Excel I made is just kind of very simplified in terms of some of the different labels you may want to have to sort out your information. So I played around with the job search site. So you can always fill that out, of course, as you go along. One can be from like Glassdoor, Purchase Job Score, Indeed, LinkedIn, the position or positions from each site, the qualifications. Some of them may be asking for X amount of experience, some of them for technical skills. It's kind of nice to keep track, and that way you can say, all right, I found a job on LinkedIn that's asking me for 2 years of experience, whereas I found a job on Glassdoor that all they want is Excel really, and maybe an openness to learning, a good mindset, things like that. Helpful resources, you can take anything and everything we've discussed, as well as some of the ones you've already been using, and plop them on there and say, ONet really helped out because I've never heard of this job before, it sounded interesting, and ONet helped me learn how much they make. Do I have to go back to school for that? And so on. And then lastly, pros and cons. This is just something I like. You don't necessarily have to use this, but the idea is that some jobs may have great benefits, but perhaps the commute isn't so great. Or the, let's say, the time, it's kind of like a wonderful opportunity, but it's just part-time as opposed to a full-time job, which is certainly more stable and consistent, but maybe it's not your preferred opportunity. So you can always play around and make a list and sort out your own thoughts, your own feelings, and that's what I think of pros and cons. And lastly, I created a Word document version of this. So I just played around with the same labels in terms of job search site. I just had some fillers of A, B, C, and X, Y, Z. The position or positions, qualifications, helpful resources, pros and cons. And that way you just go and start plugging information. So you can go like this, director, assistant, qualifications, let's say leadership. Don't mind my spelling. Helpful resources, we can say ONet and Plusfile. Pros and cons. Let's say lots of expectations. Lots of money. So, you know, you can be honest with yourself essentially, and just kind of break it down in a way that makes sense to you. And that way, you know, if you do this for every position, or at least let's say 3 to 5, it's a nice way to break it down and have a full understanding, as opposed to, I saw 20 jobs, I applied to them all, you know, if I hear back, I'll cross that bridge when I get there. So it can help to divide and conquer. And now that we've had our discussion and we've looked at the different resources, we will talk about our next steps. And by any means, if you have questions or comments, feel free to drop those in the chat, but I'll also be covering them too after the slide. So the next steps I want to mention is organizing your information and creating an action plan. So I gave you 3 different options. There are so many different ways to be able to organize. Perhaps you're somebody that likes the mind map, but you don't want to do it on a computer. If you prefer old-fashioned pen and paper, you can totally draw on a notebook or sketchbook or anything like that and be able to create it for yourself. At the same time, creating an action plan is important. So let's say if you're somebody who's a bit of a procrastinator and you say, you know, I've learned about all these new awesome websites and I can start on the Excel because I thought that was kind of cool and easy, so I'll just plug in my information. And then you kind of forget, or you don't really make a concrete plan, so it never really goes anywhere. You don't want to do that to yourself because it's a way to lose track of time and not really be organized. So you want to be able to say, okay, maybe in the next 3 weeks, I'll take a look at ONet, Buzzfile, and I'll use the Excel sheet or the Word doc or the mind map to be able to start applying or getting ready to apply for 3 jobs, right? And if you feel that's a fair goal, absolutely fine. If you want to be a bit more ambitious, go for it. If you have things that you're worried about and maybe you can only do that for 1 or 2, that's okay. As long as you're progressing and moving forward, that's not a bad thing. Everyone has their own pace. It's just important to be able to make the best use of your time. And if you have any questions, if you have any struggles, as I mentioned, self-care is important, but also reach out to your support system. The Career Development Center is here to help you, so please don't be shy or hesitate to reach out to us and ask us questions. And that's my bullet here for career counseling. Shameless plug. We're happy to help, to be honest. From here, continuing to explore and use self-assessments. So maybe you've gone through a program, but unfortunately, you may not have a clear picture of what it is that you want to do just yet. Maybe you're still interested in exploring. Maybe you're thinking about graduate school or doing something like the Peace Corps or traveling to teach English abroad, things like that as a placeholder, and then you start to go into a career. So that's absolutely okay. We do have things that are built in place for this. So we have Focus, which I believe is here. Yeah. So Focus is an awesome assessment. It's completely free, and it's also a partnership with the Advising Center. So shout outs to them for helping us out with this. The idea is that you create this account on Focus, you take the test, and that way you're able to see results in terms of what you're interested in, what your strengths are, and kind of put that into perspective. And then you can use some of the resources we talked about to be able to connect that and say, okay, it says here that I probably would be good at helping people. Let's see what a teaching career could look like on ONet. So just some food for thought there. The other thing I want to show you that I mentioned is the website that looks similar to ONet, but not quite. And that would be NY Career Zone, or careerzone.ny.gov. So this is kind of an attempt to add like a younger audience in terms of like high schoolers and teens. And what I mean by that is it tends to be a bit more expressive with this art in terms of having, you know, motion images and things like that. The idea is that it's very similar to ONet. It takes information from the US Department of Labor, but it also has assessments, which ONet really doesn't. So if you want to check out your interests, and if you're familiar with the Myers-Briggs and doing your combo, so if you like being realistic, social, and artistic, it'll tell you occupations based on that, and it'll be from Job Zone 1, so very entry-level friendly, all the way to Job Zone 5, which is, you know, going back for another education or having to get a certification or degree for this explicitly. And similar to ONet, Bright Occupation Outlook, it'll tell you the letters. So if you're ever interested in this, or for work values, a similar idea. You just kind of do that and check out jobs. So if you're kind of like, I don't really know what I want to do, maybe check out some of these assessments or focus, and that can help to give you more data to make educated decisions. All right, so thank you for tuning in today. I really mean it. I know that summertime is kind of difficult to sometimes stay on track and be focused professionally, but thank you very much for taking the time to join us. If you have any questions, this would be an awesome time to do so, and I'm right here to report live and answer you. And I didn't forget Alex or Alexander about your question for the slides. So if there's anyone else that wants to get the slides, I can make sure that you all get it. Yes, definitely, Sarah. I will email you the slides. In addition, I will be emailing the 3 different, the mind map, the Word document, and the Excel. It may be too big for one email, so you may see like 2 or 3. I'll try to keep it down to as few emails as possible. But you'll definitely see that in the next few days. I just have to make sure that the recording is uploaded to YouTube. And once I share that, we'll start sending out the information. So you can check out the recording, all of the slides, and the 3 different outlines that I created. And thank you for asking. All right, and any questions, please feel free also to unmute yourselves if you prefer to speak directly. That's absolutely fine too.
Hi, Jeffrey, Aubrey here. I just wanted to say thank you so much for going through this. My industry, I'm a recent graduate and I'm a scenic designer. So it's a lot of freelancing and just reaching out directly to people. So I think that these websites will also help me broaden my searches. So just wanted to say thank you.
Of course, fantastic. And certainly it can depend. So for that, I can certainly see that being like a freelance gig economy, especially right now. So it's good that you're certainly here today and that you're gonna take use of the resources we've discussed. Just in case, I also wanna let you know for our services, if you, let's say, find somebody who would be great to speak with and you're typing up your email, but you're not too sure if it's the most professional or if it really gives the message you're trying to say, you can always email that to us as well and say, hi, Jeff, I'm sending this to the director of so-and-so, and I just want to make sure, it looks good, basically. Can you give me any feedback? I'd be happy to do that.
Sounds good, thank you.
Of course. And I see, Sarah, will the link to the recording be on the same page as the last one? Yes, it should be on the same YouTube channel, if that's what you're referring to. It should be, I want to say, uploaded today, if not tomorrow. Great questions. Any last questions? And I'll also take this time to say I hope everyone is in good health and doing okay. I know the weather is nice, so I hope you're able to enjoy that too. Thank you. So in this case, I will wrap up today's presentation. If you have any questions after, because I'm about to end the recording, that's perfectly fine too. As you can see here are our individual emails. I want to say we're all pretty friendly and approachable, so if it's not me, I highly recommend one of my colleagues as well. All right, so we are done recording. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming in today. I would say if you want to make an appointment and follow up, depending on where you are in your job search, please feel free to let me know. If you want to check in with us later, like in August or so, if things are going well, and just say, hey, I found a job and ONet was super helpful, then we'll celebrate. If you say, I've applied to a few places, I haven't really heard back, and I'm not really sure what's going wrong, I'd be happy to sit down with you too. So best of luck to all of you. Congratulations on graduating. I'm sure you're all relieved to have finished. So I hope the best for all of you. And have a nice day, everyone.